60th episode of DevKami, and I'm Chile.
I am
Oops.
Tristan.
And I am Sumain, the guy that fights internet shutdown.
Yeah. What does it even mean?
Wait.
It's a term. Yes.
Wait, this is 60, so that means 52 was already done before. That means
Yeah.
we've already celebrated a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we did
Wow.
a celebration without you
Wait.
actually.
Okay, so I've been out for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're awesome. You had
Okay.
a group. Yeah, hobby
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
not coding.
Mm,
Just to
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, you
So-
didn't. So sorry, I missed a number of our podcasts because the latest one we sang for the premiere of Frozen 2.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that was an
That's
interesting
nice. That's
gig.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
you're not singing
Not-
about Snowman, right?
Yeah. No. But
Oh.
that's the Frozen. That's the first Frozen. The new theme song for the Frozen 2 is Into the Unknown. So it's also a catchy tune, and because it's a premiere, there's a lot of like people dressed up as Kristoff, as Elsa, and as Anna, like just like going through the theater and then just watching. So that was an
Confession
interesting.
time. I haven't watched Frozen.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, some people like
I
it,
haven't
some
watched
people
it.
don't.
No, I haven't watched it. No, it's not because I don't like it. It's just I haven't watched it.
Mm.
Okay. So let's.
I
talk
should
about
actually
events.
after this.
Yeah, you should. But before that, we should talk about events.
Yep. What is going to happen?
So, we have quite a number of entrepreneur-heavy events. We have starting tomorrow. We had a Monash hackathon. You can't register anymore. I think it's full, but it's a hackathon in Monash University at Sunway. Then at the same
Hackathon,
day,
huh?
yep. They have a focus on education, so I do not know how, but okay. Then on the same day, Techstars had a startup weekend for food. So, do you know the idea of startup weekend?
Yeah, I took part in startup event.
I took part in one earlier one. I actually won something in between. Really interesting experience. I managed to hack a product out. So one of the few times that I managed to do it. So they had a startup weekend with a focus on food happening at Publica Shopping Gallery and Suraj Thomas. I'm not sure whether I can still register, but this is happening over the weekend from Saturday to Sunday. No, from Friday to Sunday, I believe. So what else do we have? Then
We have Monash hackathon.
yeah. That is happened on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we skip until Wednesday.
Yeah. This is at devkami.com/meetups, by the way, if
Yep.
you're interested in all of these
Oh no,
things.
Ruby is not there.
It's happening this Tuesday. I still have to add it. All right. So Ruby Tuesdays is happening this coming Tuesday. It's always happening at the first Tuesday of the month. We're lucky because we do it the first Tuesday of the month, so we don't have to deal with the holiday season, unlike some of the meetups that meet at the end of the month. So I guess, I am presenting this coming Ruby Tuesday. So if you're interested in controlling I/O through a Raspberry Pi using Ruby, then you should come and go.
Cool. Then on Wednesday we have Data Council. This is happening
KLJS.
and KLJS. Data Council coming, detail coming soon. But for KLJS, also happening on the same day, will happen. I don't have the detail. Interesting.
No.
They have somewhere, but we can follow up on devkami.com/events.
Yeah. Yes,
And
I
that's
think
about
when we have more details for KLGS and Data Council, we just update the calendar.
Correct.
Yeah.
So with that said, we should move on to our bus corner.
Yep.
So what's happening? What is buzzing? So
you do it then.
okay, so the first one is Europe is running out of IPv4 address. Uh,
Yeah.
Unless you're Europe, IP in Europe, that's about it. Goodbye, bye bye.
Yeah. The good
Then,
news is that it's not internet breaking yet. The bad news is
yeah,
that we ran out of time to move. We hit the deadline of migrating to IPv6.
mhm. But we already are on IPv6 for a while, so that's awesome. It's not obvious, but most of your router will have IPv6 already.
Yep.
Then the next one is I'm on the wrong channel. We have blah 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 running out of IP address.
Lee,
Can find out. Yes,
Lee Sedol, the dude that fought against AlphaGo, the
yes,
Korean Go master, decided to retire.
and it's not really. It's not just because AI had beat him, but it's really because he does not agree on how the Go Association in Korea function.
Mhm.
So
Do you want to
Yeah.
elaborate on that?
because the organization takes a cut of the pay of the prize money, even
Oh,
though
okay.
they, for example, and they do not, and the organization are not transparent about how they use the money or whatnot.
Mm.
So that is
So
one of the reasons.
is he defecting to the US?
I don't know. I don't
He's
know,
not
So
from
but
the. He's from the South Korean, the right
yeah,
yeah, well,
Korean.
still, like he'll if he becomes a U.S. citizen, then he can join the U.S. Go Association,
Yeah,
and he can
hopefully.
compete and earn the money as however he wants.
Yeah.
maybe. But
Mm.
even that, you should. Okay, so off topic a little. I believe it's still on Netflix. You should watch the documentary AlphaGo. A bit of a
Mhm.
marketing to Google Brain and AlphaGo project, but it's a good story on how they train. How they train a story of how they train a machine to beat and how the games look like. Uh, and they run the whole thing on the laptop, just so you know. Really interesting.
Mhm.
Okay, so next one. Next, and probably the last one is actually. Oh, you can find KubeCon 2019 video up now. So if the
Was
Kubernetes, join them. Oh, and the final one that's more interesting for me. Hub Proxy 2.1.0 is out. I use
I
Hub
don't
Proxy one, so
I don't
I'm
use our
interested.
proxy.
You
So
write your own load balancer. I heard.
It's so easy to do it.
Mm.
but
So
Tristan, I heard that you
Yeah,
found something interesting on
yeah.
Kickstarter.
So, can
I'm on
we
shit.
paste this on? Yeah, put this on the chat. So I just back. So I if you've been in the JS and the Ruby meetups, you've probably heard me talk about microcontrollers and programming them. And one of the projects that I use to program microcontrollers would be Esprino. So it runs so basically, you have microcontrollers running JavaScript, and the presentations I had was using ESP32. Now, this is a different microcontroller from Nordic Semiconductors. It's an NRF 52832, so it supports Bluetooth Low Energy 5.0. And the guy who made Esprino was able to find this watch. I think it's the F number 18 or something, F1 number 18 or something like that. So it's a watch. It's like a generic Chinese watch, Chinese made watch that uses NRF 52832. He reverse engineered all of the equipment, all of the like sensors, etc., and then programmed Esprino on top of it. And now he's doing a Kickstarter for this. So it ends in 3 hours, and it's actually quite interesting. So if you would like to get your hands on a smartwatch that runs JavaScript, and it's quite good specs as well. So it's like IP68, waterproof up to 10 meters. You have Bluetooth Low Energy, quite a good battery. It's also hackable. You can disassemble it. You have like solder pads there. You can like basically just get the chip out and program it however you want. And it's not just for JavaScript as well. If you would prefer to use the Nordic SDK for programming it, then it's fine. But of course, the appeal here is that it opens up like mobile programming technology to people who would like probably are beginners, like because JavaScript would be their first language, for example. And the Esprino, I haven't been showing this out off because it's like I would prefer programming in the JavaScript language, but there's also a way to program it using Blockly, which is like
Uh,
similar to, I
Scratch.
guess, yeah, to Scratch. You have your blocks, and then you have your like similar to how you would program microbit, for example, right?
Yeah.
So it actually compiles back into JavaScript, and then you can use that too. So it's also good for children, let's say. And it's he had so the guy has already had, I think, four or three or four successful Kickstarters in the past. So this like the usual thing about Kickstarters is that you might not get funded, or like the whoever did a Kickstarter did not eventually get into production, and then you don't get something, right? But this person has been doing Kickstarters for quite some time, and he has been quite successful. And I backed it mostly just to support his project. Like I would like to see more the kinds of languages in microcontrollers, like something like this for wearables, just to democratize the programming of our devices. Because
Yeah.
like it just like
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago, like you needed to have like a particular SDK and a pick programmer or whatever, just so that you can program all of these like small microcontrollers. But now you have like all of the tools, like, and it's very very cheap to just like get them and then practice on your own. So I think before so this is the I would consider this part of the buzz corner, because like this is like what's
Interesting.
in right now, at least from in our sphere. And it's only like it's ending in 3 hours. And so before this show, I think we were talking about these things being similar to how the Spectrum ZX80
Mm-hmm.
ZX81 was very changed the culture of like people at that time. Like the ZX8081, there were like relatively cheap machines, and all they did was like you have to program them. It's not very powerful,
Yeah.
and then you have to program them, and then you can play around with it. And that's generally how a lot of people in our generation was introduced into programming. Probably not the ZX8081 itself, but maybe like an Apple computer. In my case, it was ZX80, but I was it was I was too young for the ZX80 until I rediscovered programming with the Apple II, and then that's how I got started. I don't know about you how you got started, but that was generally the time period, the ZX80. And I feel these microcontrollers are the same thing. The Raspberry Pi tried to do it, but they found a market in the signage, the digital signages, or in the manufacturing sector. So they
Yeah.
have that. Arduino tried to do it as well, but I guess you still needed a full computer
Yeah.
to program it, right? And they were like mobile was trying to do it as well, but then eventually like, oh, in order to succeed you have to be very very polished, so the barrier to entry is also very high. But these
Yes.
projects like the Bangle JS, the smartwatch that you can program in JavaScript
Yeah.
is considered nowadays to be a beginner's language. Everyone can start learning it. You have a
Yes.
JavaScript interpreter in your browser. Everyone can just like open up your browser and run JavaScript there. So it's the barrier to entry on these types of things are very low. So
Yeah.
hopefully this kinds of projects will be the start of what the ZX80 and ZX81 did for that generation of people. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
guess 2 hours,
Get this.
2 hours left until the Kickstarter ends. So
Uh,
get yours.
quick.
Yeah. So I like the whole idea because for often when people look at programming, one of the first thing they think about is a boring screen and a
Hmm.
boring thing, and you can make something flashy move around, but it's still on the screen. This
Hmm.
breaks up the whole idea of programming as a screen thing, and or app thing or phone thing, but something more than just that. So I like the whole idea for it, and hopefully it actually inspire kids to do more things.
Hmm.
Let us adults, techy adults, do more insane stuff. But yeah, I like the whole
Yeah.
idea.
Will you back it?
Nah, I'm too broke.
Okay.
I have
Yeah.
a
All right.
resolution this year is to grow my savings. Okay, this I
Mm.
always grow my savings, but I hope to
I just,
significantly grow bigger.
I just broke.
You just what? Sorry,
I'm just broke.
you're just broke. So I actually ordered like a breakout board for the NRF 52832 to prepare for,
Yeah.
because it's only going to ship on March, and I want to like at least know how the chip itself, unless you back the early bird, right, which is like I think only one's left. So so you'll get it on December 2020, which is like a pre-production thing. um,
Yeah.
but if you back it normally, then you get it on March next year.
Yeah.
So I wanted to try out with the NRF 52832. So we'll see. I ordered one. It's quite cheap. It's a bit cheaper. I think about 20 when I got the breakout
Oh,
board.
not bad. Not a
Yeah.
bad price
No,
actually.
the chip itself is quite cheap.
Oh, the
It's
chip is
the
like
it's just a Bluetooth low energy microcontroller, right? But
yeah,
it's the gyroscope, the compass, the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
GPS.
yeah,
Because the watch has GPS. It's the
yeah.
manufacturer of the IP68. It's the battery. So everything else that makes it more expensive.
Correct.
The
The
form
NRF
factor.
is actually the NRF is actually the competitor to the ESP 8266 in a way.
Yeah.
They used to be a bit more
Well.
expensive. No, they are
Mm-hmm.
cheap in their day until, but it's still expensive-ish until ESP 8266 comes in and eat their lunch. So they
Well,
make them
why
equivalent.
I think the 8266 is competing in a different category because that's Wi-Fi, and a lot of that 32 has BLE and Wi-Fi.
Correct, 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 correct.
So although the problem with the ESP32 is that they only support Bluetooth 4.0, I think.
Yes,
Yeah, so
yes,
not 5.0 and not the long range
correct.
Bluetooth, which the newer
So,
version, the 52840, supports the long range version. So that's
yes.
where they're competing.
So that as a result, they get good price point, which is awesome.
Yeah. So in fact,
So,
there was some news that Xiaomi, um, the air the what do you call this? The humidity sensors, all of these IoT stuff, but
yeah,
by Xiaomi, they were
yeah,
supposed to go with ESP32 2 years ago, but I guess they never did because I haven't seen any with an ESP32 chipset. But they do have an NRF, the previous to 82532, the 81 something, in one of their humidity sensors. So that with
yeah.
a Bluetooth. So again, these chips. So this is actually interesting because you wouldn't know that these chips, like STM32s or like that Nordic Semiconductor stuff, they're actually in production. And if you realize, oh, this is actually running a chip that I know how to program in, you just find out where's the UART connectors, or like where are your SWD or JTAG connectors. You can go in, dump the firmware, and then look into it. What is it doing? Or maybe write your own firmware, right? So
Yes,
it opens up a lot of possibilities. Like this is not a black box anymore. You
yeah,
actually can program the thing and you have more control over your devices.
yes. It's awesome. So that's it. I think Tristan is getting a bit excited, but I love that thing. Awesome. So I
Yeah.
have my stuff to show off as well.
Everybody is get everybody can get excited in whatever they're interested
Yeah.
Yeah. So mine, by comparison, is a bit
in.
more
He's
boring-ish.
Steven is too excited to
Oh
want to
wait,
start.
so I'll segue into your thing. So the watch
Yeah.
actually runs something called TensorFlow Lite. So
Ah.
they actually programmed in like few gestures because it's a watch,
Oh.
right? So you can gesture
Oh.
like this or like this, and then you can control
Yeah.
something. But because your gestures are different, so you have to train the model so that it understands how you gesture and then how the watch orientation changes and what do you mean it to do. So it does a little bit of machine learning on the watch itself.
Okay,
A bit
interesting.
of AI. Yeah, so
Yeah.
segue into your thing.
Okay, so first disclaimer. Officially, I have a AI degree. Officially, also, I never practice it. I don't practice it as much as I like it. Because but then during my
Because you
time I
prefer
was still
natural intelligence. Yeah,
because I spend my time hacking Linux than actually learning AI. Actually learning AI though, expert system is awesome. But that said, I found two of my old books. This is not actually a textbook. This is actually a book I found in the library, and I'm willing to cough up the money to buy it. So at that time, people used the study loan to buy this stuff. We give back name, but I used my study loan to actually get a book. So I'm going to
Mm.
talk about this later. And this is also another book. This is called Expert System. This is an actual textbook. Cool story here is the professor that teach us that semester actually is a friend of the author and get an agreement to allow us to photocopy it.
Oh, okay.
So, so yeah, I can show this to you because it's not so illegal. That's another story. But the reason I show this because this is also swimming's journey into obscure and forgotten algorithm. So
Enlighten us.
who, huh?
Enlighten us.
Yeah. So do you know what is an expert system?
Yeah. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So before we had a thing, before Siri exists, before personal assistant exists, uh, one thing that researcher discovered in the 60s is that you can there is actually ways for you to chain logic together. So you essentially can use if and else, and you can actually chain something together. So and as a result, it can actually possible. It's actually possible for you to chain a thing based on rules. So I give you an example. So you want to thinking real life stuff. Uh, so a
withdraw
fruit.
money from ATM. Okay, sorry, never
No,
mind.
no, 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 no. Something smaller and a bit more boring.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know a fruit is still fresh? One, it doesn't smell bad. Two, it's not. It's still firm. And three, it doesn't. So you got these two rules, right? It smells good.
It
It's
doesn't
still
ooze liquid.
yeah, it doesn't ooze liquid. So what happens is if still have liquid, if firm, then if firm that and if smells good, if something therefore fruit is fresh.
Bad.
So
Okay.
this is what this is called a rule-based system because you have these three rules. Another example that we usually use in our prologue class is called backtracking. We use
Rule base
backtracking to
basically rule base basically like the traditional way of doing everything, right?
correct. So what happened is you also okay because one of the exercise that we always use in logic programming is this. It actually comes from ancient Greek. If all men are mortal, if Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is a mortal. So it's actually
It's
so what
a
happened is early
What
AI
about
researcher.
Pythagoras? If natural number is if rational if it's not irrational, drown the person.
Yeah, it get complicated really,
Sorry.
really fast. It get complicated really fast, and I'm going to explain to you why expert system doesn't take off much later. But it
So
goes into this.
the thing about expert system is basically a name for rule based kind of a system. In
Yes,
case I get it
correct.
wrong, okay.
And the reason why it's called expert because they use it to encode expertise.
Okay.
So often they use it for something a bit more specialized out like car maintenance.
I think it's
Because
like because it requires domain knowledge to encode the
Correct.
rules.
Correct. So when AI researchers figure out that they can encode logic, so what happened is this is just expansion. You collect all sort of rules for you to actually build up a knowledge base. It may sound weird right now, but at that time, we don't have a concept of wiki and all that.
Mm.
Remember, this is the 70s, so you do not have chatbot and all that. You're talking
The
about rules, database, and all.
the glorious future of semantic web, right?
Correct. And this bit before that. So one thing they do is, what is a bird? A bird have wings and bird have
Oh,
two
so
legs
it's
and
like duck
whatnot.
typing as well.
Correct. Uh, but here's the problem with expert system. The problem with expert system is just to identify an animal already had five rules. A bird have wings, head, two eyes, leg, and all that. Now suddenly you're going to add things with feathers, then fur and whatnot. So your knowledge base get really big really
Mm.
fast. As a result, expert system fell out of use, but uh, it still exists in some way. Do you heard of the thing called JavaScript rules? And so Java rules. It's a
What is
modern
Java
rules is what I
Drew?
call the rule engine. A rule engine. So what we do, they have the same idea. It's the same idea of expert system. In fact, it's this, but they focus mostly on rules for business. Your
How do you
consumer,
spell that?
customer,
Java.
not Java. Then it's a Java library called DROOLS rules.
Oh, okay.
So you get it.
Yep.
So it's a rule-based system, and people use that to actually build rules for insurance. If you have high blood pressure, how much you get for your premium. Yeah, if you have high blood pressure, you overweight, how much you get. A lot of this that can still be rules. Sometimes they use decision tree, but for initial one, rules can still be used because it help drive things over, right? Uh, but it's not. But the best case of people what are known for a rule-based system is what they call MyCin. Just look, it MyCin. MyCin is an expert system for diagnosing meningitis. It's actually pretty well used, and it's a case study for expert system. You probably can see some source code around. It's written in Lisp and all that. So a lot of these are actually just pure logic and a lot of rules. For something that's very limited, expert systems are awesome, but unfortunately, you have to maintain the rules. So which is why expert system kind of died out most of the time, but but some of the technique still exists in modern AI system. For example, Watson, for example, have some technique that derive from expert system. So for one, Watson rule system have part of it written in Prolog. I should share the link. They describe it because you need Prolog to actually build, assemble some, encode some rules to make it easy for you to search rules for it. So obscure and forgotten technology number one, expert system, and from it also the idea of logic programming, Prolog and whatnot. Very interesting stuff. I find it is an interesting period of history that people forgot about. Uh, but I learned this expert system is actually already dying out actually, which is why at that time I find it a bit old that we still teach expert system. But uh, in a way, if you know it, then you can find it that that's how you can incorporate into your chatbot. The chatbot have because you need some rules in your chatbot to know what you should be doing. So same idea. So you can't encode everything, but you can encode something. So that's one. Forgotten technology number two. What do you know about pathfinding algorithm?
I only know about A star. That's it.
precisely.
It's the
And it's
like
actually it's not even forgotten at all. If you do self-driving cars and mapping, build mapping and all that, you're still using A star all the time, most of the
if you
time.
want to cheat MST minimal spanning tree.
Yes. So A star is very cool. So again, I think A star is still covered in class. So let's skip that. I mean, it's interesting, but you heard of a thing called simulated annealing. Simulated annealing.
Trivials. I don't even understand. Is that even English?
So annealing is a process where metal. How do you strengthen the metal? You heat
I
it
don't
up.
know.
You heat it. Then it form. Then if you want to heat it again, you heat it up again. Then it will be stronger and stronger because the crystalline keep rearranging themselves into a stable form, and more stable form. So simulated annealing is a technique where you try to introduce some mess to the data set and all that. You try to build an optimal. So when you learn TensorFlow and all that, you're learning about learning rate and error rate, right? So what happens is re, you are forcing relearning. So your error rate is here. Mess around with it, change the value so that you essentially heat it up, so that you try to search for better optimal. Because what problem with traditional machine learning system is we have a thing called crap, I learned this before. So essentially what happened is when your error rate goes so low, then you stop there, they stabilize. But whereas the problem is if you go further, there's actually a lower learning rate, error rate. So a similar annealing actually force the error to force it to learn, to search again. So hopefully they search a better error rate.
Good
So
one.
not many people talk about this anymore. I find this interesting. So you had a solution, then when
Apparently,
you get the
the
solution,
genetic algorithms follows similar methods.
no,
In terms of
yes,
probabilistic, the
correct, correct. So I should, I hope to spend that to do exercise, do some of the algorithm. Okay, what do you know about particle swap
is that related to swarm?
algorithm precisely? Uh,
I mean, is that related to the swarm? I forgot the name. Go on.
you should look at a project called Boyd, BOYD. I do not know whether the
Yeah.
software still run.
Is that something to do with the flocking thing? I think I've heard about
Correct,
this
correct.
before. Where,
Swarm particle optimization is about flocking. Is actually a class of particle swarm
uh-huh.
optimization. So what
I'm
happened? Use
Yeah. Yeah, I
yes,
might have seen a visualization some time ago about
correct,
like lots like pseudo birds. It's not really birds, but they I guess they model it with
Yep.
like birds because of the flocking
And
behavior.
also drones, right? A lot of drones.
correct. Yes.
How they coordinate.
Basically,
So
it's like basically like the decision happens and then everything else like gets their decision based on the a former decision made by one of their flockmates or something like that,
correct,
right?
correct. Yes. For Boyd and all that, what they discovered is that when you watch National Geographic, sardines actually goes in a big ball, right? It's a big ball. It looks so ordered, but fish do not have intelligence. How do they do that? So particle swarm
Aliens.
optimization,
Sorry. Sorry.
aliens,
Sorry.
aliens. So particle swarm optimization, what happens is you have this. This is a fish. You go in one direction. The fish will instinctively follow in one direction. Now imagine more of those follow together. Now you get a swarm.
Because they follow us. They all I'm gonna adhere to certain patterns when
Correct.
they encounter certain. I mean, when they are in a certain activity or state.
Yes.
So when most
Uh,
of them together, they will behave like an intelligent system, but
correct.
it's actually not.
Yes. And particle sort optimization have been used to actually search for optimal solution to an area so that you can actually move your data around to optimal set. Not many people do that because it's just not there anymore. But
Is it
particle
something like
sort
to
of
find the minimum or the maximum, like those
correct,
these
correct,
like gradient descent kind of
correct,
tech?
correct. A lot of this, I'm going to tell you just now, a simulated annealing, a particle sort optimization is about finding the minimum, local minimum, and better minimum, or whatnot, right? Because it can go at so random places. It encourages search for a better solution, and that's the abstract level for it. Yes.
This is quite, I almost, well, not really almost, but like very near to the concept of quantum computing, right? Where
Oh, not even close.
it's not
No,
okay, because
let
quantum is
Tuesdays
about,
finish.
isn't it about like not really getting to the answer, but like getting all all of the possible answers, and then get shaping
Yeah,
it so that it's the the answer that's most likely to be the correct one is the most probable one.
I think
So
Uh,
it's like they're all affecting each other.
yeah,
So they basically they're
because you don't know
canceling.
when to end, so you want the whatever that is minimum in that
yes,
Yeah.
tree like kind of things.
yes. So machine learning algorithm traditionally is about probability than absolute, because only Sid talk absolute. Wrong analogy. Uh, Machine learning system is about probability, which is why we are happy at 70 percentile in
Yeah,
the early days. Now we like 90 percentiles, and we all go for 90 percentiles, but not one.
yeah, and
Uh, yes,
a bit
No.
funny because I've been trying to do a bit of this thing, and I
yep,
found out that the importance of the magic constant is is really
yes,
huge.
yes. Currently, a lot of the machine learning algorithm have constants and all that, which is make learning a bit complicated. But yeah, either way, it's different technique, same idea. A very different technique. Classifier system. That is when we use image recognition. That's a classifier system. That is well known. It's just that it used to be their own study. It's their own study because early days of AI.
Classifier
Another
system is like tagging the system. So
correct.
like our is it a hot talks kind of functionality?
Yes. So how about an algorithm? What do you think about an algorithm?
Familiar, but I just tell me about it.
Okay, so and algorithm is used for pathfinding. Now, A-Stack is cool because it generally know how to go to the shortest path. Gain music everywhere, everywhere. And algorithm are based on very actually use what N does in the real world. So how does notice
Oh,
that
the ants, as in the
some
colony algorithm. No,
no, it's not N colony. This is yeah, you can say that, but this is more of pathfinding.
okay.
Sometimes they're confused between the two. So notice that at end, once they found the food, everybody follow the same line to get the
Yeah.
food and come back. The reason for that is that every time an ant walk to a place, they deposit hormones as a sign,
Mm.
right? Okay.
Pheromones.
Pheromone.
Yeah, pheromones. I'm so sorry, pheromones. So once they found food, then they go back. They go back to their nest. Now what happened is the same part is strengthened because they deposit more pheromone. So what happened is at end we
Yeah.
go we follow this pheromone.
This is
Another
an
end will follow the
experiment.
same pheromone.
This is an experiment I
Yes,
like to do last time, which is I like to like put something fragrance in between and gonna screw them off.
you're evil. I like
Yeah,
it.
like or put water in between, and they're gonna mess up for a while. Then they're gonna figure out and they're gonna resume. With it's a bit of effort on their side, but
Yeah.
once they found the path, they're gonna continue. So I think it's
Yes.
related to how what a certain path and certain how they recover the kind of path.
So and turns out that ants actually have an optimal path, and here's why: because the pheromone evaporates. So what happened is it evaporates. So the shorter distance, stronger scent. Right?
Eventually, it'll be okay. Eventually, it'll be the shorter that prevails.
Correct, correct. It's very interesting that how they do that. The thing is, an algorithm is very emerging. It's actually very emerging as a behavior, but it's very interesting to see, and you can actually implement it in code actually. So yeah, an algorithm. Nobody remember that, but it's very cool.
Yeah, artificial pheromone system. Wow.
Yes. Then the cover neural network. Before
What cowboy?
TensorFlow or that.
Cowboy
Huh?
neural network. Cowboy.
Cover.
Oh,
So
I didn't see the
neural
word
networks.
cow.
No. There's no word cover. The book
Oh.
covers the
Okay.
topic.
Okay.
Yeah. Neural network is a classic. So if you use TensorFlow, you already know that. So it's very cool. At that time, neural network is very slow and it's not predictable. It's a black box. But neural network is awesome.
It's still a black box now.
Yeah, correct. But it's
One question:
very,
how do people test? How do
it's
you?
the same. It's the same technique. Believe it or not, the thing. Okay, they use a different technique, but the same idea. You know, error rate, optimum, minimal, and all that.
Yep.
It's the same thing since the beginning of artificial intelligence. Once a machine learning system, you're talking about that actually. Uh, Very early day of artificial intelligence is about search tree, minimax. Uh, Deep Blue is a form or is a variant of a minimax tree. It's not a minimax tree. It's called a black tree.
I think three. Okay.
Chess is fast enough to be small enough to be calculated using tree algorithm using a supercomputer, and it's still nowadays a computer can calculate fast enough. It's tree search. That one is totally absolute because you either win or lose, and you just cut off the tree. Uh, Early day of artificial intelligence is about absolute. Absolute as in either you're correct or not. So game tree is like that. Expert system I talked about is like that until they introduce uncertainty for better prediction. But until then, because think about it, all men are mortal. Socrates must be man. Must be human. There's no such thing as may be mortal, right? Socrates must be mortal, not may be mortal. Traditional AI is operating on that principle. Nowadays, AI is operating on a probability. It's a bit different. So this one I cover reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning is something that people already use most of the time. I believe you know genetic algorithm. So genetic algorithm, essentially what happened with genetic algorithm is you try to grow your solution, you evolve your solution. You think, which is horrible.
I think it's like there's a certain population health.
Yeah,
You have to introduce mutations.
correct.
Then you're gonna kill them off.
Yes,
And whatever that survive,
correct.
you produce
It's
more
like
of the
Jurassic
similar.
Park, but it's actually it's more like actually you try to breed a new plant species. Genetic algorithm is more like that. You try to cross different breed, then you get something out. Then
Correct me if I'm wrong. Genetic algorithm is pretty much brute force, right?
yeah, it's very brute force. It's actually very brute force like, and it's the problem with genetic algorithm is it have a tendency to got lost in the process. So that is actually one problem with genetic algorithm.
So it's like the game Spore. Was it Spore? Where
One
you
Sport,
where you
sports
evolve the animal.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
okay.
Cool
but
game.
you it's easier to think of it like, let's say you want to breed a species of rice, right? So it turns out that you need a species that works well in Manila. So you try to breed your different hybrids to work well
Do
in
you plant
Manila.
rice in Manila?
Oh no, wait. I think Phoenix Point is coming out soon. So this is exactly how the monsters evolve. So it
Yeah,
evolves with your play style. They actually like, depending on
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
play,
yeah.
they
Oh,
combine
Phoenix
the
Point.
stuff that you can't kill immediately, and then they create a
Correct.
new monster based on that.
A bit
Oh,
off
and
topic.
for
You
Chilyong,
know,
Path of Exile, Metamorph League has this thing as well where you actually can combine different properties of a monster that, and then you can make a new super monster that has all of the abilities of those
Yep,
monsters. See, games are
I have
good
opinion
for
on Phoenix Point.
training.
yep,
Yeah,
It it looks like I mean, the way they advertise it is like too much.
yeah, 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 yeah.
hmm
But
So
that demo is promising.
yeah, but
they are
it,
from the guy is the one who created XCOM.
yeah, but
Yeah,
the marketing is
So
like over the top, like
yes.
it's gonna like too good to be true kind of. But I'm gonna reserve my judgment. It's gonna come out within a week.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So genetic algorithm is about survival. You mix and match, then kill, then hopefully something survives. Survival does. It's also known as evolutionary algorithm. I like that one. I actually implement one before just because I'm bored. I show you the guys the source code later. It's actually pretty fun. Then finally, algorithm that people forgot about. Uh,
Game of
what do you
Life.
know about? Huh?
No, not
Yeah,
Game of Life.
yes. Artificial life. Actually, I will bundle this together with a multi-agent system. What do you know about multi-agent system?
confession, I
Um,
never did Game of Life.
Linear programming or solving for multiple variables in
You're right, but multi-agent
no.
system is very cool in a way that artificial life is a form of multi-agent system. So what happened is it's essentially playing the Sims, except you want the Sims to come up with a solution.
hmm
So in this case, you want to simulate a simplified form of economy. So you want to so you may want to simulate supply and demand and all that. So it's actually a hot topic nowadays using
So it's like
multi-agent system to understand the
this
economy.
is it's basically a Monte Carlo simulation,
Except you can
right?
imagine that you literally can imagine that yes, but a multi-agent system literally had an agent that can think for themselves.
Well, it's still rule based. I don't like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
not
yeah. You
necessarily.
had to. So, but each person will have a slightly different rules and all
Yeah.
that.
So yeah. So it's the simplification there for the game of life is that if you're a cell, then you either live or die based on these rules, and
Correct.
then let of course you don't have a solution at the end. You just find out like what happens at the end, right? But I guess
Correct. Correct.
for multi-agent, you have a particular solution. There are rules, and you find out at
Yeah.
the end of the simulation, okay, what happened?
Yes. Precisely. Precisely. Problem with multi-agent system is not precise. Same problem.
So
Then
that's why
finally,
you combine some of them for the. It's very important if you know the just like how we mix and match algorithm in building stuff is that you have to know the right kind to mix and match together.
precisely, precisely. And
A
final one I will
question
talk about
for
is
yeah, question for
yes.
swimming. What's the difference between accuracy and precision?
Oh man, I
Because you you
It's
said
a
you
good one.
precise it.
I confused with that as well. I don't remember the
Okay.
definition between
It's a good one.
accuracy is about shooting straight. Uh, what is chances to hit a target?
Since you
What
mentioned
is about
XCOM,
Yeah.
uh,
yeah,
the famous XCOM, the sword in front of you with 99% accuracy, but you still miss.
yeah,
hmm
precisely.
What is the what was you can say it's not precise or it's not, the accuracy is low.
It's not. Oh man, I do not know. I don't actually know. Because when I study, I actually concerned about the number go low. And that's about it,
Yeah.
actually.
It's
But
just
it's
as
actually
strong.
very important. It's very important because 19, when you miss a 99% shot, is the reason why you had a discussion between probability and
Yeah.
accuracy. So,
I
Okay,
yeah.
think
sorry,
yeah,
you had one last thing that you wanted to
Yeah, one last
show
thing.
yeah.
them.
You heard about fuzzy logic.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Fuzzy logic is actually very simple. It's something between 1 or 0. And the reason you have that is because fuzzy logic had a very interesting story. Remember when I say in the early days, artificial intelligence is absolute. Socrates is man, therefore Socrates is mortal. You cannot be like 50% mortal. Uh, Turns out that for robot to move, robot are not absolute. When you walk, you are roughly moving. You're not moving two water two step, then drop your leg. Then you move 10 degree, drop your leg.
Yeah. You have to.
Turns out the robot doesn't work that way. Which is why you have fuzzy logic. Fuzzy logic is you move your leg up to a certain level. It doesn't really matter how accurate it is, but then you move. You go slowly. So fuzzy logic is that, and it's very effective for washing machine because the washing machine are not discrete, right? So which is why it's used in a lot of washing machines, things that do not need very precise movement. So fuzzy logic is not well taught, but it's used everywhere. I like that one. I actually took a semester for it. Interesting time they had the whole calculus for it. So for example, for battery charging, you do not need to go like 10% or something, you will destroy it. You need to like roughly 90%, roughly 80%. So fuzzy logic. So yeah, and the point is, I find this book very interesting, and it remind. But I do suggest you to actually get this book. But I do suggest you to actually start looking at various algorithms simply because uh,
Mm,
talks about it that people forget about. So, for
yeah.
example, your your chatbot can use some idea from rule-based system. I've said it many times. Uh, your multi-agent system
Even
that you
normally a parser is a rule-based system.
correct,
Like
but actually talk about parser, your compiler design, your
yeah.
parser generator have their background in natural linguistic. But what happened is to study artificial intelligence, natural language processing, they update the linguistic, the parse tree into something that is usable by computers. Nowadays, when you design programming language, you're designing the trees.
Mm,
If must come after a statement must come this way. This is actually what we call parse tree. And that's actually have their beginning from artificial intelligence, natural language processing, which Marvin Minsky and who's the old guy that talk politics nowadays? Do you remember? Chilia?
so
Um,
okay,
it's
there's a lot of old guys
Noam
in politics.
Chomsky.
Chomsky is a I don't know. Chomsky is a com science or mathematician.
No, he's a linguist,
Oh,
but
okay.
the past tree is actually come from his work in artificial intelligence.
Oh, really? I didn't know about it.
He had contribution
Yeah,
in artificial intelligence.
his political view is a bit very
Interesting, but
controversial.
yes, correct.
Yeah.
So, and there's actually a lot of other. Oh yeah, you know your reinforcement learning by OpenAI and all that. Those are multi-agent system. So again, I suggest you look at it. It's very interesting. And your Swarm system is also used. One of the best way to actually have the best shortcut is actually have slime mode. You know slime mode. It's not
Yeah.
on mode. Uh, those are actually those have the best those actually will choose the shortest route everywhere. That's a swarm system to predict the best route. So it's very interesting.
Let's
Very
argue.
interesting.
Let's argue about semantics.
Yep.
What do you consider a prediction?
A prediction is okay. Traditionally, prediction is about step by step. It's about step by step action. It goes like.
Is it based on a certain knowledge for prediction?
So, for
Not
example,
necessarily.
in science, right, a theory is like a theory if it can be used to make predictions. So,
Yeah.
so you have your theory of relativity or general
Yes.
relativity, right? You can predict the movement, a particular movement of astronomical
Photon.
bodies because
Yeah.
it's you have your theory. You can basically look into the future,
Correct.
because as long as you know that these things follow the same rules that you
Correct.
assume to be like that. So that at least that from a scientific point of view, that is what is a prediction.
Predictions. But there's also a situation where you learn something without the knowledge, something implicit. For example, when you kick a ball, you roughly know a path, and you will know uh, whether you will hit a goal. That is, you don't have a full body of knowledge. Human doesn't work that way, but yet we actually know that whether should we pass the ball to another person
Is,
or we should
is
close
there
the ball.
another word? Arguing about semantics again. Is there another word for like what do you call it? A prediction that is based on a certain knowledge than something that is grabbing stuff from thin air or from the dream that you had last night.
Actually, that is actually part of a philosophical argument of intelligence. I don't remember the name for it. Because early artificial intelligence do talk about things like is intelligence a collection of knowledge, or intelligence something that is implicit, that is not that is generative. So so traditional AI is thinking that there is a specific mechanism that allows us to get knowledge, and to know things means getting more knowledge. That's expert system. That's why people have expert system, because they believe that collect more and more knowledge. More and more knowledge means you get pretty stuff you know things.
Yeah.
That is
Same
actually
with
the
human
idea
beings,
of
the knowledge might not be necessarily truthful or it's a,
yeah, correct. So in this case, you should look. I shared a link called CYC. It's called Psych.
yeah.
It's actually a whole collection of rules to build a baby in intelligence. I think it'll go out nowhere, but very interesting nonetheless. But there is actually another way to think about this. This is what OpenAI people does. Whether intelligence is implicit. Remember the football thing I tell you about? We are not building a whole knowledge in Newtonian mechanics just to figure out how to shoot a football. That is something that we feel about. So it's
Yeah.
still
It's from it's the feedback that we receive from the external factor.
correct. So there is a whole philosophical argument about that. As artificial intelligence goes on, we realize one thing: we cannot encode knowledge. It's a path to nowhere, which is why and it's not useful. Turns out that putting stuff nowhere is not really useful. Fuzzy logic is useful because it can guide missiles and build robots, but it's not really useful because turns out that actually there's a paradox for that as well. Some of the hardest thing that we human do is very easy for computer, like mathematics, and anything that is easy for human to do, like walking, is actually hard for computers. Turns out that as you go along, we realize that knowledge is not very useful. And let's say you want to do a prediction of clicks on your ads, right? Those are statistical learning system. That is not a whole knowledge. Those predictions are not done by a whole knowledge of human psychology. Those are predictions are based on trends that we see. It's an equivalent of hitting of whether to pass a football or try to aim for the goal. And like that, you do not get out time. The same way you don't hit the goal all the time.
Yeah. We have a name for it. in
Yeah.
real world. You call it talent. Sorry.
Yeah, but even talent only give you like 90 percentile, right? 90
I don't
percentile.
know.
There's no
Is
100
is
percentile.
there a proof number of that?
I don't know, but artificial intelligence, the history of artificial intelligence and the philosophy of it is full of this paradox. That is actually why I'm interested in. This is why I'm interested in artificial intelligence. It's not just language. Uh, it's and when people at that time, what do I get from my 10-year university life? I'm
10
lucky
years?
to 4-year university life 10 years ago.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
am I too early? Am I too early at taking artificial intelligence in an industry that is not ready about it? The short answer is no, because
It's fine. It's not too late.
it's not it's not too early either. It's not too early either. Turns out that all these little thing, uh, logic programming, all that is still useful in place you didn't think about. You generally know what you're talking. You generally had an idea what it
I think
is.
we have to close up.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about it from me.
Anything we
Yeah.
want? Yeah, you want to add in, Tristan?
No, no, quite interesting discussions.
We should
Yes.
actually extend on this because it's something that I seldom touch.
Yes.
Hmm.
Turns out that I have a book about statistical learning
Uh,
somewhere.
yeah.
That's the future.
Right. I think. Is there any question from Nicholas or anybody? No. All right. I think it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye. Sorry for my
It's
rambling.
No, it's
time
fine.
to say
It's
Yeah.
very helpful.
goodbye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.